Good evening, everyone on this Zoom call, and also, and perhaps in particular, to the public who are able to watch us, and we hope are watching us, being streamed live on YouTube. This is the meeting of East Herts District Council Development Management Committee being held today, Wednesday, 9th of September. Just before we get into the agenda, I'm going to ask our attending officer, Peter Mannings, just to confirm to me, as I think I'm right, that David Andrews, who is a member of the committee, is not yet present. Is that correct?
I can't see on my screen, so yes, that is correct.
Now, on that basis, I think, Peter, we need to ask a substitute to step up and take David's place. Is that correct?
Yes, right. And there's two subs on here, so either one depends on the training.
So I'm now talking to the substitute members, Stan Bull and Sally Newton.
I'm quite happy, Chairman, to stand as a substitute.
Yes, indeed. I was just going to talk to both of you, and just to say, actually, firstly to Sally, that if it's okay with you, Sally, we'll call on Stan this evening.
No, that's fine.
Thank you very much. And
no, that's fine.
In turn, Sally, a convention that we've adopted on this committee is, and it's nothing personal at all, is that substitutes do not appear on the Zoom screen. And that's because we're trying to be as clear as we can to the viewing public, so there's no confusion as to who is a voting member and who isn't. So if I could, in the nicest way possible, just ask you, if you could track us, would you please? And if you could track us on YouTube, that would be lovely as well, if you can.
I'm happy to do so. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we do now have a fully constituted committee. For the benefit of the public, I'm just going to explain who we are showing up on the screen. Essentially, we have different types of people that you can see on the screen. Firstly, we have members of the Development Management Committee. The members of the committee are the people that get to vote this evening and make this evening's decisions. I am going to just go through each member of the committee by name and just get them to wave so that you can see who they are. I'm the chairman. I'm Bob Deering. The deputy chairman is Tony Stowe. Thank you, Tony. Stan Bull is substituting for David Andrews. So Stan, give us a wave, please. Good, thank you very much, Stan. Then we have Terence Beckett. Thank you, Terence. Ruth Buckmaster. Ben Crystal. Rishi Fernando. Jonathan Kay. Ian Kemp. Tim Page. Thank you, Tim. Carolyn Redfern. Thank you. Peter Ruffles. Excellent. So they are the members of the committee, and it's those members who will be voting this evening. We also have on the screen at the moment, I think I'm right to say, two other members who will not be voting this evening. And one of those is Jane Goodeve, who is the executive portfolio holder responsible for this area of the council's activity. Thank you, Jane. And the other member on the screen who will not be voting this evening is Councillor Chris Wilson, who is the local member in relation to one particular application and will be speaking as the local member, and he also does not get to vote. There are, in addition to those members, there are also showing on the screen several officers who are employees of the council, and they're here to advise and assist the committee. Just in the order I can see them on my screen, we have David Snell, who's a senior planning officer. Thank you, David. Got Peter Mannings, who's Democratic Services. Thank you. Victoria Wilders, who's our legal advisor. Thank you. Sarah Saunders, who's the head of planning, but for some reason whose picture always appears towards the bottom of my screen. I don't quite know why that is. Jill Shingler, who is planning officer presenting one of this evening's papers. And you don't see his picture on the screen, but we have another officer called Stephen King, who's operating the Zoom connection for us this evening. So by way of introduction, we know who we all are. The next thing I have to do is just read a note that relates to the fact that we are conducting this meeting virtually by Zoom because of the coronavirus situation. And the note reads as follows. The local authorities and police and crime panels, coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales Regulations 2020, came into force on Saturday, the 4th of April 2020, to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This is to ensure local authorities can conduct business during this current public health emergency. This meeting of the Development Management Committee of East Darts District Council is being held remotely under these regulations via Zoom. It is also being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. Now we move to the agenda. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies. I believe I'm right to say we have had no apologies, but of course David Andrews has not been available and is substituted by Stan Bull.
Yeah, that's correct. So in effect, we're apologies on his behalf, and yes, we've got a sub, so that's fine.
Item 2 is chairman's announcements. I'm unaware that we have any chairman's announcements. I'm just looking at Sarah to see if there's anything she wishes to. No, she's shaking her head. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. I think we may have one or two of these. So, Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I have a declaration of interest in agenda item 5B.
Thank you very much indeed.
Can we have the nature of the interest briefly?
Sorry, I'm a volunteer on 2 of the items that come under section 106 money.
Thank you.
Do you need to know which ones?
It might be helpful just briefly.
I'm the chair of the SYPRC committee, which runs the Ballfield Centre,
Okay.
and I'm a volunteer for Sawbridgeworth Library.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckmaster. Councillor Page.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have an interest to declare in agenda item 5A. The application involves land previously owned by Bishop Stortford Golf Club, who will be a party to the provision of a proposed biodiversity mitigation area. As my wife is a member and shareholder of the golf club, I will take no part in the determination of this application.
Thank you very much, Councillor Page. If anyone else has anything to declare, now is the moment. No, I'm not seeing any hands, so thank you very much for that. Then we can now move on to item 4, which is the minutes item. Now, on this occasion, can I just emphasise to members that we have 2 sets of minutes to look at this evening. The first are for the meeting that took place on Wednesday, the 15th of July, and the second are for the meeting that took place on Wednesday, the 12th of August. We need to consider those minutes separately.
Correct.
So if I might first of all take the minutes for the meeting of Wednesday, the 15th of July 2020. Does anyone have any comments? No, in that case.
Happy to propose the minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruffles. And I think Councillor Buckmaster's hand moved very fast there, so you're seconding. So we have a proposal and a second. This is for the minutes of 15th of July. All those in favour?
I believe that's everyone. Yeah, I think that's everybody there.
I think so too.
Yeah.
We now move on to the minutes of the meeting that took place on Wednesday, the 12th of August 2020. Again, if anyone has any comments. Otherwise, I'd be grateful for a proposer. Terence Beckett, thank you. And a seconder, Ian Kemp. Too late there, Carolyn, you've got to move fast. All those in favour?
I believe that's everybody, I think. Oh, Stan Bull's hand isn't up. Yes, it is.
I'm not sure if I can see hand from Ben Crystal. Maybe I missed it. Sorry, Ben.
I didn't attend.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I get my apologies.
That's fine. Thank you.
It's fine. 1 abstention. Fine, no problem. Otherwise, fine. Yeah.
So good. So that's very, very good. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we're there then. So we can now move to the planning applications that we are being asked to consider this evening. The first of these appears at page 45 on the pack. This is application.
We need to make sure we get the councillor Page out of into the breakout room before we really
Okay,
go.
I'm sorry. Yes, okay. We'll let that happen.
I think that's just happened.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first application we're considering this evening is application 320-0245 FUL. This is for the erection of 61 dwellings, including 24 affordable dwellings, accessed from Manor Links, together with associated highway works, landscaping, ecological enhancement works, utilities, drainage infrastructure, and parking at land east of Manor Links, Bishop Stortford, Hertfordshire. If I could ask the officer in question to present her report on this item, I'd be very grateful. I think it's Jill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Before continuing, can I just draw members' attention to the summary of late responses which has been sent to you this evening, and in particular the request from County to add the names of specific schemes that the Section 106 contribution should go to into the Section 106 recommendation. This is important to ensure that they can legitimately require the money, the contributions towards infrastructure, and so yes, we'd like to add that to the Section 106 requirements. This isn't additional requirements; it's just specifying which developments it should go to. In addition, you'll see the late representations include concerns raised by objectors, particularly regarding omissions in the officer's report, to do with the way the objections are listed, and some concern that not all the objections have been properly addressed. You're reminded that the report does only provide a short summary of the objections, and it's not intended to fully repeat all the objections. They are, of course, available to view if required. It is agreed that some issues raised by objectors are not specifically and individually addressed in the report, although it's not considered that these impact on the recommendation. Among the aspects that are referred to are the impact of the proposed new golf driving range on the new development or on existing developments. And this is a separate application, and the impacts of it will be considered under that application, not under this. There's also concern, or there's a request that all construction traffic should go through the golf course to minimise impacts on residents of Manor Links. And a condition requiring a construction and environment management plan is proposed on the end of the agenda, but it's not reasonable to require access over the golf course land, which is not within the applicant's ownership, when there's access available directly to the site. Other matters raised in the late reps are more directly covered in the committee report or have been addressed in the summary report, and it's not my intention now to read through the whole of the summary report unless members feel it would be useful to do so. If I could ask Stephen now to put up the first plan. Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you. This first slide sets out the proposed site layout for the dwellings, showing the two accesses into the site, which would create two cul-de-sacs with a central small green area, which through which there's a footpath link, so you can walk from one side of the development to the other. The access ways that you can see there from Manor Links lie between existing properties in Manor Links and are to be adopted by the Highway Authority. The minor roads within the site, however, will be private and are shared surface. 61 dwellings are proposed. These back onto the those that back onto the boundaries of bungalows in Manor Links are also bungalows. A small two-storey block of flats is proposed in the southern corner, and there's a mix otherwise of two-storey dwellings. The layout accords with that was adopted in the master plan for the site in principle. If we move to the next slide. This slide shows the proposed tenure of the dwellings. In this case, the yellow dotted properties are the market housing. The pink dotted properties are the proposed affordable rented social landlord, registered social landlord run properties, which amount to 23% of the overall total. And the blue dotted properties are those that are proposed to be in shared ownership, which are 16% of the total. So 40% in total of the scheme is to be affordable in accordance with promised policy. And the pink highlighted bungalows shown there, which are also affordable rented, are disabled dwellings, so wheelchair accessible, fully M43 compliant. If I could have the next slide, please. These are just some examples of the house types that are proposed. So they're traditional in design and materials with pitched roofs and gable features. And it's considered that these are appropriate to the location. Next slide, please. This shows examples of the bungalow designs, which are some are entirely single story, as you can see. The one on the left, entirely single story, and has been redesigned in the course of the application to make it less possible to develop into the roof space, so that it will remain a bungalow into the future. The proposal on the right shows that some of the bungalows proposed do include a small area of space in the roof space, which is usable. However, the ground floor does provide all main living accommodation, so it is a livable single-story unit to that extent. There are no proposed rear-facing first floor windows in these properties, so there's no overlooking of the properties in Manor Links. Permitted development rights are proposed to be removed to prevent dormers and roof additions without planning permission in the future. If we could have the next slide, please. This shows the proposed block of 6 flats in the southern corner of the site. You can see the design's being kept relatively low, and overlooking is minimised. There are 3 bedroom windows in the rear elevation, but it's not considered that these would create excessive overlooking of the adjacent property to the rear in Manor Links. The next slide, please. This is just examples of street scenes within the site. So you can see there is a fall in the site, which makes the roof levels more interesting as you look at the street scenes. It also demonstrates through cross sections the relationship of the proposed bungalows to the existing bungalows in Manor Links. If we could have a look at the next slide, please. Again, further examples showing the design and of the proposals. And then last slide, if we could go to that, is a CGI representation that's been provided to indicate the quality and detail of the design that's proposed for the site. So in summary then, this proposal is to provide 61 dwellings as part of the district plan development strategy, including 40% affordable housing, so 24 units in total. Whilst concerns been raised that the number of units exceeding 50, which is what's set out in policy BISH 9, the policy is for around 50 units, and it's not doesn't specifically limit it to 50, and it's not considered that the additional number in this case is excessive for the site. Adequate garden provision, parking and amenity space for the development is provided. The parking provision of 126 spaces is appropriate for this edge of town development, and there's no substantial harm to neighbouring amenity from overlooking or overshadowing. Highways are satisfied that the scale of the development is acceptable in terms of highway impact. Cycle parking will be provided, as will electric vehicle charging points. And the development will deliver appropriate levels of financial contributions towards infrastructure and suitable provision off-site of an ecological area to secure a net gain in biodiversity in accordance with policy. A significant reduction in CO2 emissions beyond building regulation requirements is proposed. And overall, it's considered that the proposals accord with policy and will provide a sustainable form of development. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to prior completion of a legal agreement under section 106 as set out in the report, and to conditions. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. I think we now move to speakers. We have two speakers in relation to this item, one against and one for. We will take the speaker against first, and he is Mr. William Stringer. I'm now looking at Peter. I'm hoping that Mr. Stringer is standing by to speak. You have to unmute, Peter. I can't hear you.
Whenever you're ready, we can unmute him and he can speak for 6 minutes.
Lovely. If you could just bring him on, and I'll explain the 6-minute rule. So
Stephen will need to do that. There we go. I think he's unmuted now. Should be able to hear you.
Hello, Mr. Stringer. Good evening. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening, Councillor Deering.
Good evening. I think Peter Mannings has explained, but I'll just repeat that you've got 6 minutes to speak. How you use your 6 minutes is entirely up to you, but you will be timed, and when you get to the end of the if you're still speaking, it's quite a long time, I think you'll find. But
yes.
If when you get to the end of the 6 minutes you're still speaking, you will be cut off. It's quite a rigid thing. Nobody gets more than 6 minutes. So we start the clock when you start speaking.
May I speak now?
Yeah, indeed.
When ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thank you, Councillor Deering, for the discretion to speak tonight. Thank you. With your permission, I would say, look, a very large number of residents have made numerous comments with great concern. And the feeling still remains that the planning officer's report leaves more unsaid than said. For instance, I'll give you is a gentleman called Jim up the road who said that a lot was in the in what was said when it went through the master plan, and a lot has been cut out. All the promises seem to have been cut out, and he's questioned that, and there's no reflection of that. So to my mind, as yet, there are unresolved parts which I would argue put yourselves in the position of maybe wanting to defer a decision and maybe read more. The first of these is the development oversized for COVID? I note, and I would say that my contact with the planning office has been exemplary. Rachel Card has been very supportive and helpful in helping me understand things. But I would say coronavirus is now endemic. It's regrettable that our government hasn't put out a policy about architecture pre-designed, and I'm this is no indictment of Stonebond, it's just a situation. But I do think you should think about a sign off to say, is what we're putting up COVID safe? Because I don't want COVID cottons behind me, because social housing, especially in the flats, the corridors are too small, the access is too small, and these poor people are dying behind me. And this is going to go on for years. Residents here are key contributors to the economy. I couldn't get down my road for 3 lorries putting in new driveways in the last few weeks. But they are aged, they've got comorbidities, they're high risk for COVID. So it's a very big issue that there should be some assurance that what is built is safe. Then we turn to cars, 126 cars. And I know that the planning, Jill has said that, the consultants use and highways have said, yeah, this is fine. But we have taken the trouble to put together video showing the traffic flow before we were hit by COVID. And that just suggests, there's 126 cars, something like, in the report, it says something like 30 cars are going to come out during peak time. I don't think so. I think you're going to have a lot more cars. This road will be impassable with all the cars queued up the roundabout. And, Chris Ingate at Birchwood is going to be pulling his hair out because he can't get his teachers in. He can't get his pupils in because the roundabout is jammed up. So I think it's oversized for that reason. Construction. Now, the golf club sold their land to Stonebond to build many things, including this driving range. It's financed out of the 7.2 million, which I'm told they got from Stonebond. And Jim again up the road has said, look, other places have said, yes, we've benefited as a golf club, we'll let you put a temporary road across. Obviously compensation's involved, but we'll let you do that. Manor Links is a bendy, beautiful road. It's designed to be bendy and beautiful. It's not designed for construction traffic. As I said, this road was log jammed for a couple of weeks while drives along the road put in place by local trades were put in place, and the whole thing was jammed up. And that's just 3 drives. It's not a whole construction site. So, I do believe that a temporary road, the landscaping of spoil, so many lorries, 1.2, 1.5 meters is lifted off before you build. That must be part of the approval of this scheme. Stonebond should have a serious conversation at the behest of planning with the golf club to incorporate that into what they're doing. And I hear what planning has said about the scheme, but none of us here are really clear and I'm not sure yourselves are, what Stone Bond are building. They have listened, they have taken on board, but it's been an incrementalist thing. And I really don't, I depend upon Jill saying what is going to be built behind me. But I can't pull it together myself from all I've seen because it's so disparate. So I think there should be a definitive document from Stone Bond that you can look at. And I'm going to say I'm absolutely delighted with the planning people because I was very worried about the inlet roads. I was very worried about, key services being able to get through.
I'm sorry to say that you've filled up your 6 minutes. There you go. You filled them up. So we have to stop you there. Thank you very much for your contribution. Much appreciated. We now have a speaker in favour of the application. He is Mr. Chris Whedon. And Peter, if you and Stephen could bring Mr. Whedon into the meeting, we'd be grateful.
He's already in, I think. There we go.
Where I can't. Oh yes, I see him. Yes, okay, well done. Hello, Mr. Whedon. Hello. Hello. As you know, but I will repeat, you have 6 minutes. You will not get more than 6 minutes. You will be cut off, and the clock will start from the moment you start to speak. So as and when you're ready, over to you.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee and the audience, I would like to thank you for listening to my speech. I'm Chris Whedon. I'm the Managing Director of Stone Bond Properties. We are the applicant and I've been a Managing Director for over 14 years. I'm presenting this application rather than our planning consultants because the approval of this application before you is critical to me, my colleagues and our business. Stone Bond are a small family SME business, one of only 10% remaining after the credit crunch, according to the HBF. And to be honest, there are probably even less after COVID. We're based in Chelmsford, but we've operated in East Herts and the Chelmsford Essex area for over 45 years. We concentrate on smaller architect design schemes. They're all exclusive, giving a varied product to the market. You'll probably know that we've got a scheme in Stortford Road Standon, which is reflective of what Stone Bond's quality is, different architect. And we're very keen to continue the presence in East Hertfordshire. I'm proud to say that Stone Bond have maintained the independent 5-star recommended customer survey, and the board are very anxious that we maintain this status. So as far as Manor Links, Bishop Stortford, I mean, Stone Bond, as an SME house builder, have invested considerable resource in this application to make sure that it's of the highest quality and policy compliant in every respect. And yes, we've been listening to all the stages along the way to hear what locals have to say. We've commenced engagement and with the development of the master plan and all the process within East Herts since November 2019. So this includes 3 pre-application meetings, including steering group meetings. We've done the public consultation exhibition, inviting all the local residents and others to the Bishop Stortford Golf Club over the road. And myself and all my colleagues spent our time listening and trying to accommodate people's concerns. We've engaged with local residents since then on an individual and continuing basis, so we haven't closed the door. But all my team have employed real experts in this, the best consultants that we know, architects, planning consultants, engineers, highway consultants, arboriculturists, drainage engineers, and an ecology consultant to specifically design this application to reach the position that you have before you. In fact, Stone Bond has spent over £200,000 in those fees alone since February 2014 to get to this point with this application. So you can see why it's important to an SME house builder. Throughout the process, our team has worked extensively with the council planning team, your statutory consultees and the non-statutory consultees, with considerable effort from all those guys and girls to listen, meet and hopefully exceed all the requirements asked of us. During the construction process, we believe that we'll create over 200 jobs. We're committed, we've got the funds in place as a business to start the development. So as soon as we're lucky enough for you to, if you are minded to approve this application, we'll be on site as soon as we can. Regarding the ecology, we've created, as you saw from the original scheme, a 0.6 of a hectare off-site mitigation area, which enables us to achieve a net biodiversity gain. And we'll create new habitats there for ecology, including the common ewes, within this mitigation area. And also this provides a nice landscape buffer between the edge of the development and the golf course, and giving our residents of the new development, a fantastic outlook. We've engaged extensively with the council's urban designer, who I believe now has given their full support. And we approach this with a landscape-led design scheme to retain as much of the original trees as possible. So hence the reason the design has got 2 cul-de-sacs. You can see through the middle of the development, we've preserved all the original trees, hence the reason they weren't connected to the 2. There is by vehicles, there is a footpath through the middle. And we've also included 63 new trees to be planted within this application. We've had several attempts at engaging with Hertfordshire County Council to adopt the roads, but they won't. So our policy is to convey the roads and indeed the private areas to a management company who will be able to maintain the communal areas, the roads, and control parking. We will hand over the freehold of that to a management company which will be owned by the residents when they all complete. So the residents will have their own destiny in control of financial and how the development is run. We will put a management company in place to continue it to start off with, but they will be masters of their own destiny. We're also building, as it was mentioned by the planning officer, sustainable homes. And we've committed to delivering, in addition to the standard planning and building requirements, 15% across the entire site. So that's a commitment to exceed the current requirements. We're approaching it with a fabric first, because that has longevity, but we are putting in some solar panels to some properties where they are facing the right direction. We're also putting in car charging points to all properties with on-street.
Mr. Whedon, you're in full flow, but your 6 minutes are up, so I must stop you. Thank you very much for your comments within the 6 minutes, much appreciated. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stringer and Mr. Whedon. I'm now going to ask the local member, Councillor Wilson, to speak to the committee.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter. As you say, I'm doing so on behalf of the local residents in my ward. I'm one of the ward members for All Saints. And good evening, everyone. I think first thing to say is, as Mr. Stringer touched on, there's been a large number of objections, as you've all seen, to this development, which reflects a lot of concern and consternation from them. I think it reflects the concern of potential overdevelopment of the site. The proposed amount of dwellings has also been touched on, is over the 50 that was originally proposed in the district plan. In fact, a 22% increase, which seems more than just what could be constituted as around, which is the wording used in the plan. More widely, this contributes to a bigger picture where Bishop Stortford South and development that we're talking about today, north of Sawbridgeworth, I believe, they also feed into arterial routes that go to a declared polluted area in ACMA, Air Quality Management Area, Hockwell Junction. So Dunmow Road and London Road both go into that junction, and to put developments off those roads has a cumulative effect on the amount of pollution. Now, through the traffic surveys indicated that the development will have a small, even negligible effect on traffic flow. However, at the very least, it does contribute towards that accumulative effect. In all likelihood, every dwelling will have vehicles, more car journeys, more people in GP surgeries, more school places needed. Of course, that mitigated partly by Section 106, but again, it's reflective of the overdevelopment of Bishop Stortford as a whole, in my view, where resources are stretched. And adding to the 50 that was already agreed appears to me a little excessive. So I think before we could give approval of this, I personally think the committee should look at mitigating measures regarding this development. The district plan also suggests that the Dunmow Road, Manor Links / Parsonage Lane junction should be improved by the developers. That seems to have been put on the back burner. The traffic survey also relies partially on data from existing Manor Links residents, who are probably an older demographic than those it would be in the proposed new development. So the current traffic levels in Manor Links does not reflect perhaps what it will be in future. School children also definitely traverse the road regularly. I live very nearby and I see that a lot. The route from Dunmow Road up to Birchwood, for example, is very, very congested even to walk on. So people do use this estate, wider estate, as a route through. And that concerns me that there'll be increased traffic in that route. And as Mr. Stringer's commented as well, in terms of actually getting people into schools at that time. The construction traffic, therefore, going through the proposed new development and Manor Links itself would cause a lot more congestion and potentially danger to school children. I understand George Shingler's comment that they can't be forced to use a route that they don't own. However, I question whether this is an appropriate place to have construction traffic through, as Mr. Stringer said, a very bendy road. I'm quite concerned that will cause an awful lot of congestion and disruption to the residents and potentially danger. The present cycle routes also are inadequate, in my view, around this area. They're all very ad hoc because they involve really going through private roads. So you can't designate a cycle route. So people have to work out which is the way to cycle. I don't think sustainable transport is particularly great and will particularly be taken up perhaps as much as is suggested by the developer in the report due to that reason. There's been one specific matter, a couple of specific matters actually. One was that the overlooking problems that have been suggested before, with 2 stories overlooking 1 story. However, the planning officer said that that isn't going to be the case, so that's accepted. There's also the fact that the access roads, when the cars go through the access roads, the headlights will be going potentially into the front windows of bungalows as they come through. I'm not sure if that's been considered or not, but also a point to raise, I think. Personally, I'm a little bit disappointed at the lack of social rent. From what I understand from reading the reports, that we're looking at intermediate rent and we're looking at shared ownership for the affordable houses. Often this, I feel, ends up with actually getting less stock of genuinely affordable houses because people end up buying these houses up, and also often affordable rent isn't truly affordable. So I think to start, I would rather, like Mr. Stringer suggests, defer the application and propose going back to Stonebond to look at mitigating measures I've suggested. Looking at the policy specifically, BISH 9F says that public amenity, green space and play areas should be provided. I don't see a play area, and I wonder if instead of the extra 11 houses, we could have a play area, as is suggested by the district plan. The policy also says that they will provide around 50 new homes between 2017 2022. As I've said, around 50 new homes to me doesn't mean 61, because that's a 22%, 24% increase, 22% increase. My maths is rusty. And it also says, section C, access arrangements to Manor Links, wide strategic and local highways mitigation measures, including improvement to Dunmow Road at the entrance to Manor Links. I know there's a pedestrian crossing being proposed. Besides that, it doesn't seem very much more. Obviously, that's the argument is that there's not such a traffic impact as suggested. However, that was originally in the district plan, and I'm not convinced that there isn't a little bit more of an issue with traffic than has been suggested in the report. Yeah, so I'll conclude there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. All those comments are much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, I think we've now reached the point at which we throw the debate open to the floor. If any member has a question, now is your moment. I've got Councillor Ruffles, Councillor Stowe, and Councillor Crystal. I'll take you in that order and I'll come back to you next time, Jonathan. So Councillor Ruffles first, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If we're on questions just for tidying up and making sure we've understood what we've heard from the various speakers so far, two quick ones really. I was a bit confused with what I thought was a different message coming from Mr. Whedon and from the case officer about the adopting of a bit of the road. And I wonder whether I could be told which bits are to be adopted by county, because the suggestion that came after the officer's report was that none of it would be, and I do think that's quite an important detail, so I want that clarified. More important for me, and just in case we in debating density and other things push for any big change in whatever, the bungalows I think are a very, very welcome feature in this modern time, and on this particular site very, very importantly positioned to protect the existing bungalows off site, as it were. And so I just really want to say how important I think providing for our overall housing stock across the district the bungalow is, and to welcome it. And I expect I know the answer to this question, but is the permitted development rights taken away idea the strongest thing we can do to protect into the future the bungalows not being converted into something bigger or higher? And I suspect the answer is no, and I expect if I say is Article 4 of any use, I'll be told it isn't. But they're my two questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Ruffles. I think I had Councillor Stowe next up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. A couple of points I want clarified, really. One was that in the report 6.1, the Bishop Stortford Town Council talk about this site being on a floodplain, but the Flood Authority says it's not. Could you just clarify what that is? If it is a floodplain, will the houses be built above the last known level? That's the first one. And the second one, in the report, it says it is considered reasonable to remove the permitted development from the carports and garages. Does that mean we're going to definitely have a condition saying that or not? Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think in this batch, next is Councillor Crystal, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, two quick questions. I just wanted to clarify whether there will be fibre to the door. And also, I just wanted to confirm that the 106 funding for the NHS will be valid in this case. That was just a quick question.
Okay. I could ask Bill Shingler, who I'm looking for. Yes, you are still with us. Jill, if you could maybe respond to some of those points. Or all of those points, please.
Oh, try. Okay, so as to adopting the bits of the road, all I can say is the plan shows the main part of the straight sections of the access roads to be to the County Council standard, and the implication is that they would be adopted. My understanding is that that's the case, that they will be adopted. With regard to is RPD rights the strongest we can do with regard to the bungalows and their retention. I believe it's the only reasonable option for this. I mean, potentially you could include it in a Section 106 agreement to restrict, but that's restricting future occupiers and would be very difficult to do, I think. With regard to whether it's in a floodplain, no, it's not. I'm not sure why the town council believe it's in a floodplain, but it's not flood zone 2 or 3. Yes, there's conditions proposed to prevent the change of use of the garages and carports. And the NHS funding, we have requested it and the applicants have agreed it. I assume therefore that it is a valid request.
And Jill, there was one other point, fibre to door.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes, there's a policy to, a condition to require details of the fibre to be provided, and it will be to the door. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Just before I take further questions, I'm just going to go back to Councillor Ruffles. Were you happy with Jill's answer there? Obviously, she raised the prospect maybe of Section 106.
Well, I'd like to hear what other members say about that, but I really feel, I mean, if there's just the possibility of a deferral, I'm not anticipating that, but if there is, and the whole site is looked at again, what I don't want to lose are the bungalows from the plans. That's number one. And then I want to keep them as bungalows. So I'll wait and see if any other member picks up on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so from before I've got Councillor Kay. Any others? Amanda, Terence Beckett, and Carolyn Redfern. Oh, I think I picked you up last time, Ian. You stepped off the list. I'll get you next time. Sorry. So, Councillor Kay.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think that whether the road is adopted or not, I think it's important to clarify the situation, because if it is, there might not be a need for Mr. Whedon's management company for residents, although there might need to be one for the flats and the communal areas. I don't know, but that's something that clearly needs to be looked at. Construction traffic is often a problem, but it's only a temporary problem. It's always a temporary problem. Even if somebody 2 doors away is having an extension, there is a certain amount of construction traffic in and out, and it's annoying during the course of when it's happening, but it's not there forever. So I'm not too worried about that. I welcome the fact that there are going to be solar panels in some of these properties. Mr. Whedon was just cut off after his 6 minutes when I think he was about to talk about electric car chargers. I don't know how many of the homes will have that, but I think that's encouraging too. I'd also re-emphasize what Councillor Ruffles said about bungalows, because there are so far few bungalows in East Herts, and I welcome that. I think it's important, and I think 8.9 in the document talks about the provision of housing bungalows and the provision of 40% affordable housing carries significant positive weight in the determination of this application. And I think the affordable housing and the bungalows is actually key to this in many ways. Little bit concerned about the numbers. The landscape advisor thought 50 was about right, whereas we're going for 61. I think it's a bit cheeky to say that 61 is around 50. I would have thought up to 55 would be around 50, but there we are. I think Councillor Wilson's comment about a play area was an interesting one. I don't know if Jill has any comments about that. But generally, I think that this is a relatively, attractive development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kay. I think it was Councillor Beckett next.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a bit of a bittersweet development, this, for me, because in my professional opinion, in somebody who works in construction, it's probably the best quality development we've had come forward in Bishop Stortford. Actually, without a shadow of a doubt, if you compare to Bishop Stortford North and what's proposed on Bishop Stortford South, it's a really good quality, small scale development. But I do really feel for the residents. It's a quiet, established, mature, tree-lined, very quiet development that's there at the moment, predominantly bungalows, hence why we're seeing bungalows in the new development as well. And there are the impacts on traffic, which I think we can't underestimate. So it's going to be a real difficult decision for me, actually, that which way I'll have to go at the end of our discussions. Two things I would like to pick up on, both traffic related for the development. In terms of construction traffic, I'd like to ask Jill whether, and I think it seemed possible when I visited a couple of weeks ago, whether we could put a condition that the construction traffic uses the first entrance onto the site for both developments and utilises the proposed extension to the driving range to go around the existing tree line that's going to split the development. That then obviously minimises the disruption to the residents at the further end of, and the majority of the people on Manor Links, because that first turning is quite quick as you turn into Manor Links on the left. And then the second thing was, I do have a concern, especially from the second development, the second cul-de-sac further down Manor Links. It's quite a long way up. Yes, it is a windy road, but there is the temptation for people to floor it maybe a little bit. And I just wonder whether we may ask Stonebond whether they'd be prepared to put a couple of speed humps in across the width of the road there to reduce the speed of people flying down that road post-development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Beckett. And I think you're next, Carolyn Redfern, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a short question and just a comment, really. Could I just confirm precisely how many homes are for social rents and how many are for shared ownership? Because we were given those in percentage terms, and frankly, I couldn't quite work out how many of each there were going to be. So that's a quick question. The other thing is that I just wanted to say I'm extremely disappointed that the previous in paragraph 8.8 on page 60, it says that around 50 units is acceptable. It is noticed that members will be aware that modest increases over the number stated in strategic site policies have been accepted in approvals on a number of strategic sites. Well, I don't think it's right to use overdevelopment in other areas as a reason for even more overdevelopment. And I do think that 61 can never mean, sorry, 50 can never mean 61. I might as well go around saying I am around 57 years old. It's just not right. I mean, it's too many more. I mean, I agree. I think 55 would be fine and would perhaps leave room for that play area. I just think they've just tried to stuff too many in there. So that was all I needed to say. Thank you.
Very much, Councillor Redfern. I think some of those obviously were comments, but insofar as there were questions for you, if you would like to tackle those, please.
Yes, just to go back, Councillor Kay suggested that there might not be a need for the residents to have a management plan for roads. Certainly the internal roads within the layout would still not be adopted, definitely. So yes, there would still need to be management by the residents Yeah, the play area has been raised a couple of times. The report sets out that actually the number of units is not sufficient to require a leap. So we can't require an equipped play area. There is obviously the green space within the site, and that in itself is sufficient to count as a lap, really, in that it's a local area for play, albeit if it was a formal lap, it would need to be fenced, and it was decided really that this wasn't the kind of location where you'd want a little fenced off square of land, just so you could specifically call it a lap and meet that requirement. Councillor Beckett, you've asked whether we can condition construction traffic only using the first entrance. The best way of accessing and minimising impact on neighbours will be looked at through the condition that's proposed for the submission of a construction and environmental management plan. If you look at the wording of that condition, it's very specific and sets out everything that needs to be put in. We will get that, and it will go to our environmental health officers and to highways to assess and to determine whether or not it provides a safe and secure access that won't cause harm. Normally these things, you know, a concern has been raised about impact on school children and so forth, and people using the road, and I understand that it's a narrow, bendy road, as people have said, but usually the construction management plan includes things like providing appropriate people at the entrance at the time of deliveries to ensure that it's all carried out safely and things like that. So I think at this stage we can't be specific and say they've got to use only the one entrance and go around the other side. Everything's got to be looked at, and when we receive those details, County Council will assess them, and we will reach a conclusion. You also asked about whether we can put speed bumps in. Again, this hasn't been asked for by county highways, and a lot of people, local residents, often don't like speed bumps because of the impact that they do have. I think at this stage it's not something that we can ask for. Caroline, sorry, Councillor Redfern's asked specifically how many units are social rent and how many are shared ownership, and I don't know, I can't do the maths. I'll have to, there was a list somewhere, but I can't find it. You leave it with me, I might be able to come back later on that. The final comment was about the modest increase, well, it's not being a modest increase. I accept it's the increase from 50 to 61 is beyond perhaps what you would normally accept as being in the region of or around a number. But in planning terms, unless we've got a good reason to refuse, I would need to accept that number. This site is an allocated site for residential development, and it's got to be assessed against the policies, but the around 50 is not a restrictive policy. It's put on there to give a general indication, but if they can prove that more can be provided without causing harm, then we have no good reason to refuse on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jill. Now, Peter, did you comment then?
Yeah, just quickly, for my own benefit and for anyone else, what does LAP, because I haven't got a clue what that means, and I'm going to get it minuted right. There was an abbreviation, so what does that mean?
So which abbreviation?
LAP, LAP, local something, I don't know, percentage of the play area. So what does that
Lo-
mean?
Local area of play.
Okay. In terms of members, I've got a note that Councillor Kemp and Councillor Bull have raised their hands already, but Officer David Snell has raised his hand. If your comment relates to what Jill has just been saying, David, I'll take you now.
I'd just like to go back, if I may, Chairman, to Councillor Ruffles' question about permitted development, because I think it's important before we go too far and it's forgotten. This is about the retention of the bungalows. The answer essentially is that the removal of the permitted development allowance for the properties is about as far as we can go legitimately. These dwellings have been designed specifically at a fairly low level. In fact, they were redesigned to be even a lower level in terms of the roof. And we would need to consider any applications that came forward to extend them on their own individual merits. But what I would say is, because the buildings have been specifically designed to be low level, then in order to make them two-storey, a planning application, were it to come forward, would require significant alterations to the roof and increasing the height of the ridge, etc., and dormer windows and that type of thing. Clearly, if we're considering an application, and this is purely hypothetical, if you like, but it does, I think, assist members, such major alterations to the roof of the dwellings, given that they are in a line of bungalows purposely designed within the development, would be probably regarded, and almost certainly regarded, as being out of character. So I hope that helps on that specific point. It wouldn't be appropriate in terms of an Article 4 direction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. Okay, we come back to members now. I'm going to take Ian Kemp, Councillor Bull, and then I think I saw Rishi Fernando's hand go up. Did I see your hand go up? And you'll be the third in this batch, Councillor Fernando. So Councillor Kemp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, to pick up again on the matter of bungalows, I think it's very good to see bungalows included here and the design and the location of them. I'm particularly pleased to see the inclusion of 2 bungalows for affordable rent. That will allow 2 people to be able to move out of social housing, free up their houses for other families. It's a small step, but I hope other developers will follow in the footsteps of these developers, and it would be good to see more of these. The number of houses, as has been said, is greater, but there are now quite a lot of bungalows in the facility. I'd be interested to know whether the original idea of 50 houses expected so many bungalows to be included, because bungalows tend to have smaller number of occupants than houses. And I'd also like to ask whether the 61 houses density of development, how it compares with other developments that we have been approving. My impression was it didn't look as if it would be any greater, and possibly in some cases less, but be useful to have a figure on that. I take the concerns of the residents about construction traffic and future traffic, and obviously that will be dealt with by the construction plan. And I'm sure that I hope that officers will be considering ideas such as routing as much in via the first access as possible, possibly even a brief suspension in deliveries or traffic during coming to school and going from school times. I do, however, note that the end of the road has a roundabout, and I feel this is a better way of getting heavy traffic and eventually residential traffic onto the Dunmow Road than if it had to come on at through the golf club, for example, which is a straightforward turning, which tends to create more delays. So I think the roundabout is actually a significant plus point there. Finally, I'd like to commend the developers for their approach to sustainability. It's good to see that they have managed the 10% below building regulations fabric first, and that wherever possible, they have been putting in solar panels wherever the orientation has permitted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bull.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm pleased. Definitely the developers look at development. Obviously welcome bungalows. A bit concerned about adoption of the road, though. I think there ought to be a bit of belt and braces to make sure that that is carried out in the right way. When I visited the site, I probably got it wrong, but I understood that the access into Link Road was going to be pedestrian only. But now listening to the comments from the committee that that is going to be vehicular. That particular Link Road is a nightmare at the moment. Now, am I right in thinking, other than that, they're going to access through the golf course? Now, what's the situation as it is at the moment with security going through to the golf course and the additional access for this private development? I'm rather confused there, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bull. We'll come back to you in a couple of minutes. Councillor Fernando. Can't hear you, Rishi. Maybe you need to turn your volume up. You don't seem to be muted. We can't hear you. No, still can't hear you. No, nothing happening. I tell you what, we'll leave you to play around with your volume, and I'll go back to Jill Shingler in relation to Councillor Kemp and Councillor Bull's comments. Jill, please.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Kemp asked about whether there were originally envisaged bungalows on the site, and yes, that's part of what was expected on the site, to ensure that there were bungalows adjacent to the existing bungalows. With regard to density, this is certainly not one of the most dense developments that we've had. It's a sort of mid-range density. Clearly, it is more dense than the adjacent bungalows in Manor Links, but just about everywhere would be, and we wouldn't expect this site to replicate that. With regard to Councillor Bull, I think that there is some confusion. The access will be from Manor Links. There is no access proposed through the golf course to the site.
Okay, thank you, Jill, very much. Now, I should just say that we've been going for quite a long time on this item, so we'll have another go at seeing if Rishi can speak to us. You are muted. I can see your mute button there.
Can I be heard now?
You can.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Chairman. My first point was, again, I shared some of the concerns that Councillor Ruffles had on the permitted developments right, but thank you to David for explaining that and setting out that is our strongest option. It was positive to see cabling for electric charging was going into all properties. One thing to note was, I understand from Mr. Whedon's statement, he said solar panels were being put into properties which had suitable facings. However, with a site that's having 60+ developments, they're saying there'll be 12 kilowatt peak projected, which an average system would have 1.5 to 3 kWp. So that at its best is only 8 properties, at its worst only 4, which does seem on the low side, especially for things like flats where solar panels are very useful, especially on leasehold buildings where there is service charge. And my other comment was, I didn't see it referred to in the papers, apologies if it was missed, but residents did raise concerns over the driving range and the risk of golf balls going into the new development. When on the site visit, I noticed quite a significant number of golf balls on the area that's to be developed on. I understand the new planned driving range is turned slightly, but if, for example, my golf skills are not great, it wouldn't be unforeseeable for golf balls to end up in the new development gardens, which obviously is a risk. So has any attention been taken for that? Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Now, I'm conscious that we've spent quite a lot of time on this already, so I'm going to move towards a conclusion. I think I've seen 2 more members' hands go up in this order, Councillor Crystal and then Councillor Kemp. I'll take those and then we'll have Jill's response and then we'll see where we are. So, Councillor Crystal.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo Councillor Kemp's comment about solar panels. I think the developer has done well here with 15% overall beyond Part L. That's great. I do have some concerns though. The first, I'm afraid, relates to the biodiversity assessment. The calculations by the developer, which I noted in a number of responses, were regarded as being rather thin by, I think, by 3 consultees. They indicate that the biodiversity net gain that will be offered in the site next to the development is just 0.85% positive. Now that's, I mean, my concern with the biodiversity net gain calculation is that by their nature, they're very vulnerable to weather, to climate, to pond drying out, to a plant dying back. They've got large error bars, if you like. And so when we're talking about a net gain of such a small amount, plus 0.85, we can't be sure that the net gain will become a net loss, even if there is management and monitoring. And so I would ask, I'd love the developer if they could just really just increase that a bit to give the biodiversity site a bit more flesh, if you like, so that it won't fall into that negative side. And on this subject specifically, I note that Hearts Ecology, the officer in this application, was happy with 0.85% above positive. In the next application that we look at, I understand it's not relevant now, but you'll see why. An officer from Hearts Ecology is dealing with a 4.4% net biodiversity gain, but recommends refusal and recommends a 10% gain, which I understand is the fully recommended level. So I just wanted to ask the officers whether this contradictory advice from a consultee, if it's an issue with planning authorities and with us in particular, and whether it might be advisable to communicate with Hearts Ecology to try and get some sort of more consistent approach to policy. That was my first one. My second one, I'll try and be quick. So I understand we may not, but we may pass this site tonight with 61 properties and the houses, the people and the cars. And I know there are other developments coming up on the east and south of Bishop Stortford, which also have cars associated with them. Even with sustainable transport funding, these cars will be going on the roads and into areas where there are air quality management zones. And so I just wanted to check which authority is responsible should levels of NOx, nitrogen dioxides, rise above acceptable levels, which authority is responsible? And if it is us as a responsible authority, do we fine ourselves if levels go above acceptable standards, or does someone else do that? I don't know. I would like an answer for that. Thank you.
Councillor Kemp.
Yes, I think we're all delighted to see a Section 106 funding item for the NHS, as Councillor Crystal pointed out earlier, given that we've been battling for a long time to try to get the NHS to submit things in the right format to allow this to happen. I thought, however, it had to be for specific projects, and I wasn't sure from the entry how it met that. So I'd like to have double check and to have clarification as to why the NHS funding amount here is considered to be valid under Section 106.
Thank you. Jill, if you could deal with those points, please.
Try. The first issue, I think, was to do with the risk of golf balls from the new development. Just to explain, the existing golf range can't be used if the development goes ahead. That will be in the Section 106 agreement. So there's no issue there. The new golf range is a current planning application, and the impacts of that planning application on both existing residential and the proposed residential here will be considered under that application. So if there's too much risk of golf balls overflying the proposed development, then there would need to be alterations and mitigation works within the scheme. Potentially, if there's no way of overcoming that issue, then it may be that the relocation application would need to be refused. But that is not dealt with under this application. It's dealt with under the golf range application. With regard to the biodiversity assessments, yes, the proposed increase is only 0.85%. However, there's no set amount in legislation as yet as to what amount of net gain needs to be provided. It is simply that a net gain will be provided. Again, we have a condition which requires details for the long-term management and maintenance of the new area to ensure that it does provide that biodiversity enhancement as best we can. Clearly, if there's a major change in climate, then or periods of bad weather or whatever, which are beyond our control and beyond the applicant's control, there would have been a net reduction in biodiversity on the existing site equally. So there would still be a net gain overall as a whole, I think. So I don't think we can go beyond what we're doing here. There is some contradictory advice that we get between the Wildlife Trust and Hearts Ecology, which can cause some issue, and there is some. The initial advice was to try and achieve the 10% gain, which is being put forward in future legislation, and we've made it clear that we can't ask for that at this stage because it's not actually within the legislation and we do not have policy backup for it. Certainly we can go back to the relevant advisors and I don't know, see whether we can try and get more consistent advice, but they are independent advisors, so we don't have much control there. With regard to the air quality issue, I don't know whether I can look for any help from my colleagues. David's got his hand up, if I can pass to him.
Yeah, by all means, Jill. David, do please come in. Yeah. You're muted, David. Still muted. That's it.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what the councillor means is if emissions were to be exceeded beyond building regulations in the future, who would be responsible? The situation largely at the moment is that building construction is largely the responsibility of building regulations legislation, which is separate from planning and needs to be treated as such. Our own development policy, plan policy on construction requires better than building regs. But in terms of building regulations approval, the responsible authority could be any approved building inspector or company approved to clear building regulations. Now that could be the group company sponsored by the councils of Hertfordshire, which is Hertfordshire Building Control, or it could be any other approved authorizer. So they would be responsible for ensuring at the time of development that the development complies with building regulations. If there is no real comeback on that, if it is exceeded after the approval, building regulations in some ways is similar to planning, and it's largely based on submissions of plans, but the plans are more detailed in terms of their construction than you would have for a planning application. So they might, for example, show cross sections of construction of a wall, showing the insulation and the thermal capacity of that insulation. So it's more detailed in terms of construction, but far more detailed than planning, but it is a building regulations issue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Okay, I think we've got through questions from the floor. If I may, just a couple of comments from me. First, I'm just looking at our legal advisor on this question of about 50 becoming 61. I'm pretty sure I'm right to say that there is very established precedent that is to the effect that 61 relative to 50 would fall within the parameters of about. Is that right?
Yes, Chair, you're correct.
Thank you. And then finally, question for Jill Shingler. Just going back again to Mr. Stringer's comments right at the beginning of this item. Made some notes. And although I think you did touch on some of these things in your very opening comments, Jill, I think it would be right if I just remind you of them, and so you can wrap up on your comments here. So one of Mr. Stringer's comments was that matters that had been drawn to officers' attention by residents had not made it into the report. I'm sure you touched on that in your opening remarks, but if you could just come back to that. And then, of course, Mr. Stringer was concerned that the development was, to put it very, very simply, not COVID safe. He expressed some concerns about the flats. And I wonder if you might just close out our debate by commenting on those couple of issues, please.
Thank you. Yes. Again, if I could point members towards the summary of representations, late summary of representations, which has been emailed and is on the website now. This does set out responses to the concerns raised by those late representations, including those from Mr. Stringer. We have addressed the issues raised by neighbours. None of those that were not specifically addressed in the officer's report are considered to go to the or to have an impact on the recommendation here. And as I say, they're set out here in the additional representation summary. With regard to not being COVID safe, again, that is addressed in this summary, but essentially there is no policy to require developments coming forward to have any additional space around them or within them to meet what we're all hoping is a temporary issue with regard to COVID. So we can't impose that on this developer at this point in time. Thank you.
If I could just come back on that, and this will be the last thing before we move to a vote. In planning terms, and this is a planning meeting, are we right to understand that what is proposed and what is the subject of your report, insofar as there are COVID standards, and there may not be, meets them?
Yes, it meets planning requirements, and there are no direct planning related COVID requirements for new build developments. David had his hand up. I don't know whether he wanted to add something to that.
Final comment then from David Snell. David, please, you're muted again.
Just unmuting, Chairman. Thank you. Yes, yes, we're all aware of the problems arising from COVID, but at present, the government has brought in no new design requirements for housing relating to that issue. So the development complies with current requirements, and at the present time, that is what it is required to do. If I could just fill in a bit on your question around up to 50 dwellings and precedents. Yes, there are precedents. In fact, on most of the strategic sites, the around figure in the development plan has been exceeded by varying amounts. The inspector, in approving the development plan, members may recall that the wording in the original document of up to the number of dwellings, so in this case it will be up to 50, was specifically taken out and amended by the inspector on approving the development plan to that change of wording of around. And this is largely to do with density is really a matter of design. Some very dense developments are good in design, but some equally saying that we've all seen very low density developments that are not so good. So the inspector's change is largely around giving flexibility around those design issues so that higher densities and efficient use of land can be accommodated. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, so I'm going to regard the debate from the floor as completed now. Do I have a proposer and indeed a seconder?
Councillor Kent, hand is up.
Are you proposing? Thank you. And do I have a seconder?
Can we be clear what's being proposed, Chair? Because it's not clear at the minute.
No, I can see Councillor Tony Stowe has put his hand up to second.
To second what exactly? It's not been made clear, Chair.
Yes, I do.
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm proposing that we follow the planning officer's recommendation to accept the planning application.
I did realise you just shook your head there, Ian. I should have made you speak. I'm sorry. And just for the sake of good order, then, Councillor Stowe, could you just speak to your seconding, please?
Yes, happy to second that.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to take now then a vote. So we have a proposer and a seconder in support of the recommendation for approval of this item.
A and B, Chair.
I'm sorry?
Is that the recommendations A and B? Because we've got
Yes,
two.
items, sections or parts A and B.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Peter. If I can now then take a vote, all those in favour, please show your hand and please leave it on the screen for long enough so that Peter can count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any votes against?
No.
I think on the maths, we must have at least one abstention, I believe.
Yeah, I can see one hand's gone up for that.
Thank you very much. Okay. So, thank you very much, committee. We have just debated application 5A on this agenda, and indeed B. This is application 320 0245 FUL. That relates to the erection of 61 dwellings, including 24 affordable dwellings, access from Manor Links, together with associated highway works, landscaping, ecological enhancement works, utilities, drainage infrastructure and parking at land east of Manor Links, Bishop Stortford, and we have just agreed to grant the permission applied for pursuant to the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much, everybody.
And Chairman, before we go any further, we need to get Councillor Page back into the meeting.
Yes, of course, yes.
He's back. Yeah, he's here.
Welcome. Welcome back, Councillor Page. I'm afraid you had to sit out for quite a long time there, but we had a good debate, so thank you for that.
Good.
Okay.
Happy to be.
We're happy to move on. Yes, I think we are. So we're now going to move on and deal with the next planning item on the agenda, which is item 5B. So this is application 318-2735 FUL, the hybrid planning application comprising full planning application for 85 dwellings, along with a new access onto Cambridge Road, provision of new spine road, landscaping, associated and the demolition of existing dwellings, in outline planning permission for up to 99 dwellings with associated open space, landscape and infrastructure, with all matters reserved except access at land at Cambridge Road, Sawbridgeworth. And this, the papers for this item commence at page 101 of the pack. If I could now ask the officer concerned to present the paper, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so this, before going to the slides on this one, again, can I just draw members' attention to the late reps summary list that has been provided. This at page 7 of that sets out a response from the Highway Authority to a couple of queries that I raised with regard to the highway implications of the development. And so just for clarity, because it hadn't been 100% clear, I'll go through what's been said there, which is the Cambridge Road speed limit, that there's no current plans to reduce the speed limit in the vicinity of the site to 30 miles an hour. That well, I'll cover that actually when I get to it in the description of the development. So the response there covers the speed limit issue, whether there was a need for a signalised junction, and also the issue regarding bus stops being within the carriageway of the main road. Also on page 9, I'll draw your attention to a late representation received after drafting the report, which raises concerns again regarding the sustainability of the development, the lack of the provision of solar panels, and the lack of suitable infrastructure proposals, and a request that improvements should be made to the AE 1184 prior to construction, and requesting that these issues are raised with the developer. Again, these issues, although they've been raised again now, are largely covered within the officer's report, and I won't go into them in too much detail now. So if we could go to the slides, Steve. Next slide, please. Okay, so as in the description, this is a hybrid application that's for part full planning permission and part outline planning permission, and it relates to just part of the SORB 4 site, which is an allocated development site to the north of Sawbridgeworth, and it's the northernmost site as shown on the plan in front of you now, which is an extract from the local plan. If we could go to the next slide. So the full extent of the planning application is only about 2/3 of the total allocated site, and it's the site that's outlined in red on this slide. And the two phases are set out there. So phase 1 is the full planning application with full details, which is for 85 dwellings, and the outline application phase 2 is the eastern side of the site, which is to provide up to 99 dwellings. If we could go to the next slide. This is the detailed layout proposed for the full application. And you can see the layout of the site has been designed around a central open space and an L-shaped open space, which coincides with the existing main treed areas within the existing site. Most of the land is currently agricultural grazing land, with only a relatively small proportion of it currently treed. And as I say, that's proposed to be kept. So the layout there, you can see there's a central spine road, and the application does include the spine road going through phase 2 as well. And the layout there, you can see, has a variety of house types and sizes. The sorry. So yes, the overall development as set out here generally accords with the master plan that was adopted. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this site shows the proposed buildings heights and where the affordable housing is proposed within the site. The development's predominantly 2 and 2.5 stories in height, with the exception of the part 3-story flatted block, which is proposed close to the southern boundary of the site and is shown in purple on the plan. This drops down to 2 stories where it's closer to the existing residential properties. The orange asterisks indicate affordable rented units, and the blue are shared ownership. 40% of the dwellings in total are to be affordable in accordance with policy. And you can see that the flat block was amended in the course of the application, as I said, to drop down to 2 stories adjacent to the boundary. So this plan does show that that the affordable housing is not all concentrated in one area. It is spread in groups around the site and is intended to be tenure blind, in that there are similar dwellings to those that are affordable, which are for market housing. Go to the next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed access works at the site. The main access remains in the existing position, but it will be widened out and improved, and a right turn lane is proposed. Some concern has been raised regarding the suitability of the access, and as I've said, I did go back to the Highway Authority just to clarify a couple of issues. There's not proposed to be any change in the speed limit in the area. The potential lowering of the speed limit to 30 miles an hour was on the original application drawings, and this was considered and reviewed at the speed management group meeting at the County Council prior to them responding to the application. The group that considered it contains professionals such as safety auditors, police and network managers for the area, and they concluded that a reduction in speed limit here was not warranted. They also looked at whether there was a requirement for a signalised junction at this entrance, and traffic modelling that's been carried out in accordance with what the County Council required doesn't indicate that a signalised junction is warranted here, and the road layout and geometry will be subject to a stage 1 and stage 2 road safety audit as part of the technical audit by the County Council implementation team when implementing the new road scheme. If any issues arise as a result of the audit, these can be dealt with through the Section 278 Highways Agreement to ensure that it meets all safety requirements. There are bus stop improvements and provision proposed within the scheme or as part of the scheme. And these are within the carriageway of the main road, and obviously this can have a knock-on impact in terms of slowing traffic behind it. When queried whether this was the right option in this location, given the high levels of traffic that are already seen on the road here, the Highway Authority have said that because there is often difficulty for buses rejoining the carriageway if they've pulled over into a lay-by bus stop. Bus stops are often provided in the carriageway in order that delays to passenger transport are kept to a minimum. And this is considered to be the appropriate option in this area. The prioritisation of passenger transport over private cars is, of course, part of the long-term sustainability policy. We could take a look at the next slide, please. These are just some examples of partial street scenes that are being put forward. So you can see the house types and the kind of design. They're generally, as you can see, traditional in design. They do provide garaging where appropriate, and there is just one example of a slightly unusual house type, which is shown there as plots 24 and 23, which are a pair of semi-detached houses with part 3-storey. These it's considered do add interest to the scheme. They're located overlooking the central green area and will not cause any harm to any existing neighbouring residents. If you could move to the next slide, please. Again, another typical street scene from within the site. You can see the mix of materials and the detailing. Again, it's considered that this is appropriate to this location. On the next slide. This is the proposed part 3-storey flat block, which, as I say, drops down to 2-storey, adjacent to the existing residential properties. And the elevation that is closest to the residential properties is actually located right by the access, the public footpath that runs up through the site from the adjacent residential area. And this has been designed to provide a focal point looking up from the adjacent residential area. And the next slide, please. So that's just the internal layout floor plans of the proposed flat block. And the next plan, please. And the last 2 slides are just, again, general street scene plans to indicate the type of development that's being proposed here by Countryside Homes. Overall then, the detailed full planning application, which provides is considered to provide a good quality layout that meets adopted standards in terms of and policy in terms of the affordable housing units. Sorry, I lost my thread. The design does achieve an improvement over building regulations requirements in accordance with policy, and there will be between this phase and phase 2, we will be achieving a net gain in biodiversity. The phase 2 application, as I say, is simply an outline application with all matters reserved, and is for up to 99 dwellings. The actual number that will be allowed will be very much dependent on the detail that's submitted, the layout and the design, and meeting the requirements in terms of play provision and all other infrastructure requirements. Overall, it is considered that it meets the policy, and although potentially, as this is only phases 1 and 2, and phase 3 and come forward at some point, although potentially there will be a larger number in total than the 200 or around 200 that the site is allocated for. Again, as has been said on the previous application, it's not considered that this in itself would be grounds to refuse. The impact of the development must be looked at, and where there are no significant harm identified, then the numbers would be acceptable. I think I'll stop there. I've no doubt there will be questions. Thank you.
You're muted, Bob.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jill. We move on to public speakers. It's my understanding that for this application, we do not have a speaker against.
Correct.
Just checking that's correct, Peter. In which case, we have a speaker for, who is Mr. Isaac Kibiruji. I must have pronounced that wrongly, for which I apologise.
He's on Zoom. We just need to have his camera on.
Indeed. Mr. Kibiruji, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. I do apologise.
You're not the first, don't worry.
No, indeed. But we'll keep going. You've got, Peter, how many minutes does Mr. Kibiruji have? 6?
6, correct, yes.
You've got 6 minutes. And how you fill the 6 minutes is, of course, up to you. But you will be stopped at 6 minutes.
No problem.
Won't give you any extra. But we'll start when you start to speak.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen and council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this planning committee. My name is Isaac Kibiruji and I'm a senior development manager representing Countryside Properties, who are the client for the hybrid application for 184 dwellings on land at Cambridge Road Sawbridgeworth. Countryside is a 5-star HBF home builder, and we place great emphasis on not only building homes but creating places people love that improve the quality of life of existing and new residents. As you may be aware, Countryside has several other developments that are currently being developed within East Herts, such as St Michaelshurst and Whittington Way, Bishop Stortford South. We envisage our plans for the Cambridge Road development will be another positive contribution to the district, and throughout the course of the master plan and application process, we have engaged in extensive consultation and worked collaboratively with East Herts, Sawbridgeworth Town Council, the Design Review Panel, HCC, secured by design officers and other stakeholders within the local community. As the design has evolved, we have actively sought to address all stakeholder comments and observations. We have also ensured that the proposals put to committee are compliant with the council's planning policies and the approved master plan. But we also provide a positive contribution to the aspirations of Countryside, the council and the local people. In several instances, to meet these aspirations, we have gone over and above the policy requirements. We've undertaken a lengthy round of design reviews with East Herts urban design officers and the design review panel. This has ensured that alongside the existing approved master plan, we deliver the best possible scheme design to ensure it's sympathetic to the existing surrounding built environment and delivers a well-designed scheme that integrates with the existing town and community. We have designed a scheme that delivers a connected place with a new pedestrian and cyclist priority T-junction, new shared surfaces enabling pedestrian and cyclist movements, enhanced existing public rights of way and green walkways connecting to play areas, green spaces and the existing community. The proposals also make provision for further connection opportunities in later development phases. We have also committed to enhance National Cycle Route 11 within the proposals as part of the off-site enhanced highways access works to take advantage of the opportunity to provide a safer and more sustainable transport route. We have also ensured that the design of on-site roads is suitable to cater for the Sawbo bus. It would be remiss of me not to address some of the sustainability considerations of the application, as I'm aware that these have been raised by various key stakeholders. A comprehensive sustainability and energy statement has been submitted with the application, and to name but a few commitments, we are to deliver a fabric-first approach to reduce carbon emissions over and above the requirements of the 2013 building regulations. This carbon emissions reduction is a baseline approach, and we'll seek to improve on this as we go through the detailed design process, and it is highly likely that improvements over and above the 3.5% will be achieved. We have also committed to deliver 40% affordable housing, or the equivalent of 74 dwellings, including the provision of wheelchair user dwellings. We've provided electric vehicle charging points to all dwellings, limited water consumption to 110 litres per person per dwelling, achieved a 4.4% biodiversity net gain to the development, committed to contributions to mitigate and improve the air quality impact, proposed to provide 3 new play facilities within the site, and provide high-speed fibre broadband directly to each property. We're also aware that the government have consulted on new regulations and future standards and are awaiting formal announcement before introducing these into any schemes. Countryside are also conscious of ensuring that ongoing management, maintenance and stewardship of the development's communal facilities such as open space, play space, subsystems and private roads needs to be considered. EHDC and HDC have both indicated that they are unable to adopt new space, and as such we are putting in place management proposals. I can confirm that the proposals will be like those we have used elsewhere in East Herts, such that unadopted facilities will be transferred to an expert management body such as the Land Trust. They're a registered charitable organisation and act with the interests of residents at the fore to guarantee the sustainable management of communal facilities into perpetuity. The management strategy will be supported by a landscape and biodiversity management plan and SUDS management plan that support the application. The Parish Council also advised of an interest in adopting the new local play areas, which is something which will be considered as the illegal agreement is resolved. I thought it was important to reiterate the point that not only are the proposals policy compliant, but more importantly, they go over and above this to achieve the various ambitions of the district and its residents, which is why we believe the future development will provide a positive contribution to the sustainable growth of Sawbridgeworth. The proposals will contribute a significant additional 184 new dwellings, including 74 new affordable homes. The development aspirations are to deliver a sustainable development with guaranteed carbon reduction and various other social value commitments to enhance the quality of life of residents. The economic benefits from the development will enhance local facilities through the provision of on-site and off-site infrastructure and financial contributions. Countryside look forward to delivering a high-quality new development we'll all be proud of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kibaruge. I think that's a closer attempt. Thank you very much. And you were 30 seconds to spare as well. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is a local councillor. It's Councillor Annalise Furness.
Right.
I'm waiting to see her picture on my screen. There we go. Nice and cheerful. Hello.
Hello.
Just to repeat, you must have heard this now several times. You've got 6 minutes. You won't get any more than 6 minutes. You will be cut off if you're still speaking at 6 minutes. How you use the time is up to you, and the clock will start when you start to speak. So over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to make this representation on behalf of Sawbridgeworth Town Council. We have serious concerns about the application. It has outstanding issues which have not been resolved. These should be remedied before permission is granted, rather than relying on the setting of planning conditions. In terms of numbers of homes, current proposals for phase 1 and phase 2 will likely result in, as we've heard, 184 dwellings. Yet this covers only 2/3 of the overall site. Extrapolating these figures means that eventually there could be 264 dwellings at Sorb 4. This is a significant increase from around 200 as specified in the district plan. So we are not convinced that the density of dwellings will be reduced significantly in phase 3. In terms of life on the development, it is still lacking a large enough play area, and that is a major concern. It's not good enough to say that this will be addressed in phase 2. This should be resolved for phase 1 residents. Environmental Health notes that noise within the gardens of 2 properties next to the Cambridge Road will exceed recommended levels. And it's not really acceptable that these residents will have to leave their own gardens for communal open space in order to get some quiet time. The Tree and Landscape Officer advises several aspects of the layout, particularly with regard to parking and garage positions. Parking courts and lack of space for meaningful soft landscaping are unacceptable. The biodiversity impact report predicts there will be a net habitat gain of only 4.42%, and that this is below the minimum 10% expected and is deemed not acceptable. There remain issues of existing properties being overlooked by apartments in the south because of the rising land levels, and there is no guarantee the tree screen mitigating privacy issues in the north will remain in place given that it falls outside the site. There is no travel plan. There's no detailed plan as to how walking and cycling are to be encouraged. And frankly, we think this is unbelievable given our current climate emergency and life with COVID-19, when we all know how vital it is to reduce dependency on the car for health, well-being and sustainability. Sustainable travel should be at the heart of this development and should not be treated as an afterthought, as a condition. There is no proposal to link the development to the train station via an enhanced walking and cycle route. And with the current road layout as it is, we have serious doubts about the ability of our local Sawbo bus service to serve phase 1. In the transport assessment, we do not see evidence that the impact of increased traffic, which will of course come from this property, from this development, that it's being considered in the context of other major developments. We have Sorb 2 and Sorb 3, we have expansion at Leventhorpe and Mandeville schools, and we have the Bishop Stortford South development. We know full well that this stretch of the A1184 into Sawbridgeworth and out to Spellbrook already comes to a near standstill at peak times, causing air pollution and economic losses. The air quality assessment report identifies that phases 1 and 2 will have an impact on nitrogen dioxide concentrations within what is already there, the Sawbridgeworth Air Quality Management Area number 3, London Road. And residents are rightly concerned about this in relation to the health of children walking to school. And again, I note that there is no existing travel plan to mitigate this. Lack of sustainability. The 3.5% cut in CO2 over and above current building regs is actually extremely poor. We all know how much is needed, as is evidenced by the sustainability planning documents local authorities are producing. So why are we having gas boilers and not renewable energy solutions such as solar thermal and PV, when by 2025 no developments will be able to install gas? And while electric charging points in theory are to be secured by condition, there's been no guarantee on exactly what type and how many in terms of the properties. So why is Sawbridgeworth to miss out on the sustainability standards that we know will be in place when many of these houses are actually being built? And the distribution of Section 106 monies, should this development be passed, there must be a role for the Town Council in deciding where these monies are best spent to mitigate the effects of this development. And these monies also need to be ring-fenced for use in Sawbridgeworth alone. So in summary, there is considerable concern among our residents at the nature and scale of this application, that it hasn't been considered in the context of the other recent applications, and that many issues remain outstanding, which really should be resolved before permission is granted. Sawbridgeworth Town Council is therefore against this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Furness.
Chairman.
Yep.
Just quick thing before we proceed. Councillor Fernando's connection has repeatedly failed in the last sort of few minutes. He missed most of that, and as a result, he's left the meeting. You're still core it though, so you can carry on.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Councillor Furness, I was just going to say thank you, and you'll be pleased to know that you also finished with 30 seconds to spare. So you spoke for exactly the same amount of time as the speaker for. Okay, so thank you very much to the speakers. I'm now going to throw it open to the floor. Councillor Beckett's hand has gone up already. Councillor Crystal. and Councillor Buckmaster. Take you in that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. It'll be no surprise to my fellow members of the committee and indeed to Isaac, as we've had meetings about other developments that he's involved in around the town, that my first comment is going to be around sustainability. I kind of take issue with the comments of it being a sustainable future for Sawbridgeworth when there's a bloody good chance, there's a very good chance that as built will not perform as well as designed, and it will fall below building requirements in terms of sustainability improvements. Yeah, it looks lovely. The layout looks absolutely fine, but at the end of the day, a donkey in a silk shirt is still a donkey. And I know it's no reflection on planning because we are tied to our current standards, but it's simply not good enough to have a developer that's already working in the area to come along with such a weak sustainability agenda. I find it wholly disappointing. The other issue that I have with this development is traffic. You cannot move along that road most of the time, and to believe that there'll be a minimal impact on vehicles coming out onto the road really is beyond me, and I can't see how that passes any kind of test. And then finally, actually, the only one thing I think that I really do have big concerns over, which I hadn't picked up on, that Annalise had brought up, is do we really not have a travel plan in place currently for this development? Because that's a requirement by law for all developments that have a significant movement of traffic. And on that basis, I think we should, if we don't have one, I think we should not bother discussing. We should be deferring this until we have that document. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beckett. I confess I can't quite remember who I had coming up to bat second. Was it you, Councillor Crystal? I got that right. Where you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I've got to echo a lot of what Councillor Furness and what Councillor Beckett said. 3.5% above Part L is just not acceptable, given what we know. These homes won't be presumably even started for a couple of years, so they won't be finished until long after new building regs will almost certainly be in, rendering these homes incredibly expensive to heat, and they will require the residents to then bring them up to standard. So we're not delivering, if we approve this, we're not delivering the high quality housing that East Herts should be delivering. I'm also concerned by those two properties with noisy gardens, and we should have a condition so that they can be surrounded with noise panels or trees and bushes to reduce the levels of noise. I think that's an absolute must. And lastly, you come back into the air quality management zone and the problems that this development will cause. Why have we got boilers here? We shouldn't be having boilers. Although they are low NOx, this is just the wrong place to be having them. They should be using air pumps, air source heat pumps, and solar to push up the clean credentials of the site. I don't think it's acceptable. And lastly, if you know, why not have some sort of electric car club, which would help tackle parking and emissions from the site? Yeah, I'm just really disappointed by this whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure you realise that, you know, I accept this site is part of our district plan, and so the principle of having a development there is obviously not in question. But I'm very concerned about this particular application. And in fact, I've got a whole list here of my concerns, and I'm sure you don't actually want me to go through them one by one because we'll be here all night. But obviously, some of the main ones are the fact that actually, as we've said, this is 2/3 of a development and they're already up to 184 houses. Well, actually, my maths makes, 184, 2/3 is nearer 280 in total. That is more than the around 200 that's in the district plan. And the fact that we've already had SORB 2 and SORB 3 that have both gone 20% over the amount because we have to have around, we're going to end up where we should have had 500 houses in Sawbridgeworth, which we all accepted as part of the district plan. We're actually now going to end up having nearer 600. And that I'm concerned about. Some of the things is the Development Control Landscape Advice actually states that this is an awkward layout and the tandem parking arrangement is indicative of overdevelopment. I think this all just leads to where we're going about the fact that this is an overdeveloped site, sorry. And even the landscape officer also states there are some areas of concern. I now want to go back to the 3-storey housing. Now that is in meters of an existing residential area. It is on a higher elevation than the existing residential area. So it's going to be very, very overwhelming and overpowering. It is all affordable housing, and which is it's great that we've got 40% and a good split. But, and this was in the housing officer's report, why are we having 2-bedroom flats when the local need in Sawbridgeworth is to have 2-bedroom houses? Because we have families that need houses, not flats. They talk about being tenure blind. That 3-storey block of flats is the only flats in phase 1, and it's the affordable housing. It is not tenure blind. It is, very obviously going to be affordable housing. I would ask for this application to be deferred, for the developers to go back and rethink a lot of these points. Sustainability is another one. On their own sustainable statement, their report basically talks about, as may be necessary and in accordance with any conditions placed on the application to reduce carbon demand, which we've all said isn't good enough, and improve energy efficiency, renewable energy features such as solar hot water and photovoltaics may be incorporated into the design of the development. Well, why wasn't that done originally? Why are they saying they might put it on if asked to? That's not a good enough sustainable design. They talk about making the sustainable transport and making provision for the Sorbo bus. What provision have they made? None of it is in the Section 106 money, and the Sorbo bus must have a circular route. That hasn't been provided for in the design layout. One of the things I would like changed is the condition of the Section 106 monies. It lists Grange Paddock swimming pool and Leventhorpe swimming pool. Well, as a mitigation, this money should go to Sawbridgeworth to help Sawbridgeworth people. And I would ask for that condition to be changed to actually have the money go to the Sawbridgeworth Sports Association instead of Grange Paddocks. I will leave it for now, but I have many other concerns on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Buckmaster. Can I just say one thing which no doubt is obvious to you, and that is that for the purposes of this debate, we can only take into account things you actually say. So if you feel that you've mentioned your big points, then that's fine. But if there's another significant point, then you should mention it. It's your call. No, yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I would actually like to go back also to the air quality. What mitigation are they going to do, and what is in the area of poor air quality? That's another question.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, there was quite a lot there, Jill.
Yes, there's a lot of statements. I was finding it difficult in some instances to pick out the questions, but I'll give it a go. I think that the main one, the initial one, is to do with the travel plan and whether or not we've got one. We have got a travel plan. We've got a framework travel plan, which has been looked at by county. And they say it sets out a suitable framework as a travel plan, and that it's sufficient to accept that at this stage, subject to a detailed travel plan being submitted with the conditions. So there is a condition proposed that a full travel plan is submitted. Obviously, there are monies proposed, Section 106 contributions towards improving sustainable transport and so forth. We haven't got a full list of exactly what those monies will go towards, and I think the intention is that we will go back to the Town Council to try and establish what their priorities are in terms of achieving sustainable transport measures that we can then discuss with county highways and get the best alternatives forward from that. Right, then we've got obviously concerns about the building regulations standards and how far above building regulation standards we are or are not. The policy requirement is only that we encourage achieving beyond building regulations. This proposal meets that standard. It meets that benchmark, and as such is in accordance with policy. And that's all we can ask for at this point. Regarding noise levels, yes, the Environmental Health Officer did advise that 2 of the dwellings will suffer some noise in garden areas that will be slightly above the level that it should be. However, she goes on to say that there is guidance available that says if there's alternate usable open space in the vicinity, then that should be sufficient, and that we can't refuse a scheme on the basis of that relatively low level of noise disturbance. The design of the house itself is designed so that internally there isn't excessive noise, and it is close to the open space within the site. Air quality issues have been looked at and are addressed in the report. It is an air quality management area, and there are concerns that potentially there could be an increase or a decrease in air quality. However, the normal way of mitigating that is to provide monies towards sustainable transport, the provision of electric vehicle charging points, and all the things which are proposed as part of this development. And the Environmental Health Officer is happy that that will be sufficient in phase 1, and it will be looked at again in terms of phase 2 to see whether any further additional works are necessary to prevent harm to the air quality management area. As to where the Section 106 monies are to go, it's not just a matter of just picking and choosing and saying, oh, well, we'll send money to one place or another. You've got to have a project in mind, you've got to have it costed, you've got to have everything available. You'll see we've set out on the report that the monies could either go to Leventhorpe Leisure Centre, which is obviously the nearest facility, and if there is a project there, then that's where the monies would go. If there is no project available there, then it would go towards Grange Paddocks Leisure Centre. I think I've covered everything. Let me know if I'm wrong.
Can I just say, Jill, in terms of the notes I took, I'm not sure that there was a reference to gas boilers. Not sure you commented specifically on that. One or two things, then you can come back. And Councillor Buckmaster made reference to 2-bedroom flats as against 2-bedroom houses.
Okay, so I think David Snell indicated he might want to talk about boilers.
That's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The members will be aware that sustainability is a rapidly moving feast. We are at a point where we are in policy terms, and Jill is quite right. Our policy as it stands in the district plan simply encourages. It does not require. Officers are doing their best in negotiation to seek as much improvement as possible, but we have that policy background at present. Going forward, this is a matter that needs to be addressed and will be addressed through the review of the district plan. We have because the situation is so rapidly moving, and indeed there will be legislation coming in, as members are aware, and I've mentioned shortly in terms of specifically gas boilers, but not at present, unfortunately, and our policy simply just does not require it at present. So in terms of a refusal based on emissions in policy terms, I can only advise that it would be very thin because of the policy position. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. I'm looking around the room. Ian Kemp, Ruth Buckmaster, Carolyn Redfern, in that order, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there seems to be pretty good cross-party consensus that we do not feel that East Herts District Council aspirations have been met on sustainability specifically. And 3.5% has been referred to, but with a fabric first approach, a proper fabric first approach, it should be possible to achieve considerably better than that. The developers of the previous application easily achieved 10% or more and then added further on with solar panels. Last time we had an application of Dane End which was achieving 30 or 40% below building regulations. And I think it's somewhat disappointing that the representative of Countryside Homes no longer seems to be in the meeting to hear our views on this, because I think it is very disappointing that this is a situation. And I would specifically like to ask the planning officer whether the developers have been able to give any reason why they are not able to achieve the 10%, which is being achieved by other developers without difficulty with a fabric first approach. What is weak about their approach that means that it falls short? Coming on from that, I've heard one or two people mention the possibility of deferring, and I would appreciate a response from our legal services officer as to what the consequences would be if we did feel that we wished to defer and ask for further information or ask for further improvements. A specific point on the appearance, I think it's unfortunate the 3-storey flat blocks off a view currently into the estate, and it says it acts as a focal point. I must admit I'm not convinced of the appearance of that really looks a particularly attractive focal point, and I would prefer to see it move to one side, and I don't think it would have created too much overlooking of other points, but other areas, but that's a point thing. On the NHS side, again, it's good to see that a grant has been requested. It's been counted in terms of requests for a GP surgery, and as with the case for Bishop Stortford, I would like to double check that that is actually acceptable and can be put through under Section 106, because we've had so many similar requests that had to be refused in the past because they weren't in the correct form. I would like to double check with this, and indeed with Bishop Stortford, that that wording will be sufficient, that is a sufficient project that will allow that funding to be given. Also, final point, we have 85 in the main phase of development, 99 in the outline planning phase. If we agree the outline planning phase, are we committed to those 99 houses, or could we say that phase 2 in particular should be toned down in the number of houses to provide more spaces, more play areas, and to be a lower density? Or are we, if we vote that outline planning permission through here, are we committing ourselves to those 99 houses?
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. I think we now take Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, can I just add to Councillor Kemp's question? What is the density of the application at the moment with the 84 and 99? Because it'd be interesting, because I know you say at least, no, I think at the most 99, but I'd like to know whether that, like Councillor Kemp, whether that could be reduced. I had a question about the open space, the green open space in the centre of the development. Was that supposed to be there for all of the residents' use? Because I think part of that is meant to be the suds, which has to be fenced off according to the report for safety reasons. So I'm not sure how much of that is actually going to be usable green space for the residents. And then what is actually going to be included in the LAP? Because again, it doesn't actually say what they're going to actually provide. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Councillor Buckmaster. Jill, start with you. If you want to bring David in, or David wants to come in, then that's fine, but we'll start with you. Well, we'll come back to you, Councillor Redfern, and you, Councillor Page. I'm seeing you.
Thank you. So I'm trying to work out where we were. Yes, we were asked whether the developers have explained why they can't achieve better with the CO2 emissions. We have had no explanation. I can only imagine that they know that they're policy compliant and that that is sufficient. Although they are well aware from pre-app and meetings that we have aspirations as a council for developers to do better. Unfortunately, it isn't policy, and we can only apply the policy that we have. The NHS funding issue, we have gone back to the NHS just to clarify the requirements. They argue that there are developments that this money should go to. It's specified in the report where the money should go, and it's believed that that is compliant with the regulations. The open space, Councillor Buckmaster is correct, it isn't all going to be accessible, because a chunk of it is suds, but the majority of it will be public open space, or open space that's available to anyone at the site, and will be managed as such. What will be in the lap? There is a drawing showing broadly what's in the lap, but it's as I say, a lap it doesn't have to have any equipment. In this instance, I think they're just providing static climbing equipment. There will be a need for open space within the and a leap within the site, within the larger site, to deal with phases 1 and 2, and within phase 2. So the question as to whether or not we're committing ourselves to definitely 99 units on phase 2, the answer is no. The wording of the application was changed in discussion with the applicants, because it's not clear from what they've provided that they can achieve everything that's necessary, open space wise and SUDs and everything else, and a play area in phase 2 and achieve 99 units, which is why it was changed to up to 99 units. If they can demonstrate it can be done and achieve everything else, then fair enough. If it can't, then there will be a lesser number, and that will be obviously considered in the detailed application. Again, I think there was some discussion about the eventual number of units once we get phase 3 in. We're only looking at phases 1 and 2 at this point, and we can only assess what's being put forward for that, and that obviously is within the overall guidance. It's accepted, however, that should phase 2 come forward, we will probably have more than 200 units, because there won't be just 15 or thereabouts on phase 3. However, the approved master plan for the site does indicate that phase 3 is intended to be a lower density, and with lower rise units, and with more open space and greater landscaping along the northern edge and the eastern edge, to provide a softer buffer with the green belt to the north and east. So phase 3 will be looked at on its own merits as and when it comes in, and the impact of the additional dwellings will again need to be looked at in terms of traffic and everything else. It's not being determined at this stage.
Thank you very much, Jill.
We're
now.
Sorry to interrupt. I believe from Stephen that Councillor Bull's having connection problems. I mean, has he heard all of that so far, or is he missing large chunks of what we're hearing?
Are you with us, Councillor Bull? Can you hear us?
I am now. Sorry, Chair. The internet went down.
Okay.
I'm with you now. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you very much, Stan.
Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay.
Chair, can I just check to check whether Councillor Bull actually heard the officer's response to those questions?
I didn't. No. Halfway through.
Shall I recap briefly?
Yes,
yes,
quickly,
Jill,
please, if you would. Yeah, please.
Okay, so got what I said now. Yeah, there's the NHS funding. We believe is compliant. The open space, not all of it will be usable. Some of it will be sustainable drainage area, and it will be fenced off. but the majority will be open for use. There will be some fixed play equipment within the LAP, local area of play, and the overall number of units within phase 2 is not to be determined at this stage, apart from the maximum. So the description of development is up to 99 units. It could be less in order to achieve the landscaping, open space, play areas and so forth that we require. I think that was everything.
Okay. Did you hear that, Stan?
You're on mute.
You're muted, Stan. If you could just unmute and just confirm if you heard that, please.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now, I think I've got the following 3 hands up. That's Councillor Redfern, Councillor Page, and Councillor Stowe. I wasn't sure. Did you put your hand? No. So we're just Councillor Redfern and Councillor Page. Councillor Kay's just put his hand up, so you'll be the 3rd person on this round. I need to, and I've got Victoria wants to speak. I think Victoria might be about to say that we need to be a bit careful about time. Is that right, Victoria?
I was going to say a number of things. Firstly, I think it's probably convenient for me to just interject and answer Councillor Kemp's question about deferral before we go on to the other questions. Sure. If you're happy with that, Chair. So if I just answer that first, and if Councillor Kemp's got any further questions, we can deal with that. Obviously, deferral is an option for committee this evening, and to think about. However, it must be linked to planning grounds. So you must tie the 2 together and give reasonings if that is the option you choose. Deferring the application, obviously there is always a risk of non-determination. So obviously if we fail to, the committee has failed to make a decision tonight but want to defer until a later date, so that some of the concerns can be addressed and officers can address them with the developer. However, obviously there are statutory timeframes where planning applications need to be determined in. If they're not determined within those timeframes and the council haven't got an extension of time, then there is a risk that the developer can appeal to the Secretary of State for non-determination, and we go into an appeal arena. So I hope that explains matters. And then,
sorry, Victoria. In fact, if I might then ask, put a point to you, Victoria. In that vein, am I right that when we make our decision, we need to be very mindful as to whether we are making our decision based on policies, etc., that exist today, or policies that we might wish to exist in the future?
That exists today.
Thank you.
And obviously, in another point, I know Peter's probably got this covered, but it's 9:42. Obviously, if we're going to overrun till 10, we need to have a show of hands.
I think we'll do that now, since we've just put a little break into the flow of questions. Just so everybody knows, longer-standing members of the committee do know this, but just for some of you that may not, we can't go beyond 10 o'clock without the committee agreeing to do that. I will need and I think we should go beyond 10 o'clock because obviously we're very substantially advanced in this discussion. So I need a proposer and a seconder that we can continue the meeting beyond 10 o'clock. Tim Page, I'm taking to be a proposer, and Councillor Bull, I'm taking to be the seconder.
Are they proposing we carry on till a set time or just till we're finished?
I am suggesting that the proposal should be that we carry on until we are finished. Is that what you're proposing, Councillor Page? You're muted, Tim.
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Bull, is that what you're seconding?
Also.
Thank you very much. So we need to take a vote on that, everybody. All those in favour of the meeting continuing after 10 for as long as it takes, please show your hands.
I believe that is everybody there.
Thank you very much. Okay, Well, now we can now get back to the meeting, as it were, proper. So, Councillor, so you didn't have your hand up, I think. So that means we've got two, I think, possibly final questions.
Your video.
One is Councillor Redfern, and the next will be Councillor Page and Councillor Kay. I'm sorry, Jonathan. We take those three councillors now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I second a lot of the fears that have been expressed tonight. There's one little addition which probably you don't think is very important, but I actually think it may be very important for the people who are living there, that the location of the affordable houses are all around the edge of the development, and there are a lot along the Cambridge Road itself, which will expose them to all of the noise and all of the fumes and everything of the road, and they will be acting as a buffer to the more to the market rate housing in the middle. And I just think it's a shame that it's been worked out like that, and I just disapprove of that. They're not pepper potted through properly. They are put around the edges, and I really don't agree with that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've got concerns on site sustainability and policy consistency. And really, I'll start off by asking a question about the traffic assessment. Does it deal only with site access, or does it address issues surrounding local roads? To meet policy sort 4 F, where we should be looking at access arrangements and local highways and mitigation measures. I've seen very little comment on modelling, traffic modelling on the A1184, which really is the main arterial road between Bishop Stortford and Harlow, which really could well be described as a country lane. We've had the local Sawbridgeworth Town Councillor referred to the number of large developments which will feed into the A1184. And I think that is a material consideration for us in deciding whether this site is sustainable or not. Also on policy consistency, I don't quite understand the provision of parking spaces. I believe that the figure was 217 against a requirement of about 160, speaking from memory. Requirement of 156 and proposed provision of 217. Surely that goes against our policy on modal transport shift, and I'd be interested in hearing the officer's opinion on that. Also, on another area, I've heard nothing tonight about self-build and custom build buildings, which again is a requirement of SORB 4 policy C. So if I could have some answers to that, that'd be great.
Thank you very much, Councillor Page. Thank you. And then where are we now? Yes, Councillor Kay, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This might seem relatively minor compared to what's been discussed on this item up to now, but page 116, 8.37 talks about covered secure cycle storage facilities are proposed for every dwelling, and electric vehicle charging points are proposed in accordance with policy, and this can be secured by condition. I just want to clarify, does that mean if it isn't secured by condition, they could say, well, actually, no, we changed our mind, we're not going to do it? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay. Jill, I just saw an arm waving around off screen, but I don't think it was for a question. So Jill, if you'd like to have a crack at those final set of questions, please.
Yes, okay. Just a quick one in terms of the locations of the affordable housing. Councillor Redfern's concern about them being all around the edge. There is a little bit of variation within the scheme, but I do agree that they're perhaps more around the edge. However, her concern about the occupants of those dwellings therefore suffering from noise and air quality issues, those aspects were looked at obviously with the application. An environmental health officer is satisfied that the living conditions within those units is acceptable. Yeah, well, we were asked about highway mitigation measures and whether they whether highways have looked at the development's impact on the area as a whole, particularly taking into account all the other developments that have been approved. And the answer to that is clearly yes. Their comments that were provided do set out obviously the impact of the recently approved developments, and they've taken into account the highway improvements that are coming forward as a result of those developments, which have, that's been what's resulted in a lack of a need for major highway improvements as a result of this development, because they're all being brought forward through the previous two approvals. However, that does then allow more monies to be made available towards the sustainable transport issues, which will hopefully help mitigate the increase in traffic levels. Policy consistency. I've forgotten what that was about, sorry. There was a query about policy requirement for custom built housing, which I can cover. There is reference to custom built housing in the policy. However, that requirement is for developments of over 200 units. This phases 1 and 2, which is all that we're looking at here, are not up to that 200 units. However, we did try and secure some within the site and found it actually very difficult to find a way in which it could be achieved, and we're awaiting really further policy enhancement as to how best to achieve that kind of housing on a development site of this kind. But the bottom line is we can't require it as part of this scheme, which is for less than 200 units. The cycle parking provision and so forth is shown on the submitted plans and will be listed in the approved plans, and the development should be completed in accordance with the approved plans. We're also ensuring that there's a condition on there that it is provided and kept, which is appropriate. Thank you.
Jill, I think I'm not quite sure if you picked up one of Councillor Page's questions about parking spaces.
I think I've missed that. What was the query?
I'll let Councillor Page repeat his question then.
Thank you. I just want to understand the table under key data, where to my reading there's a requirement for parking of 156 spaces, but 217 are being allocated. I understand that we're only looking at this application at phase 1, so presumably this is all phase 1, and I can't, I think there must be conflict between this provision and aspirations for a modal shift in transport. We seem to be oversupplying car parking spaces, unless I've entirely misinterpreted the information.
Yeah, if I can come back there, yes, apologies for missing that. The total required is 208. There's a possibility of accepting 25% less, which would bring us down to 156. We only accept a lower standard if we think the site is particularly suited for that. It has very good public transport and other accessibility. But there's nothing to say they can't provide the 208. The policy is actually to provide 200 allocated spaces, plus 17 visitor spaces. And we think this is appropriate for this location and is policy compliant.
Thank you, Jill. I've got two more hands that have gone up. I'm assuming that we're nearly the end of the debate now, but in the order I saw them, it's Councillor Kemp first and Councillor Beckett second.
Okay, I'll try and be very quick. First one was, wasn't sure which roads were actually being adopted by the highways. I would hope that at least the Central Spine Road would be adopted. Second one is the bus stops. I do feel great concern that in an area which already has air quality problems, there's the possibility of traffic being held up and queuing behind buses. I take highways' point that if you put them into a lay-by, they may never get out again, but there is a solution. It's a solution, in fact, that was adopted in my home city of Portsmouth and many other places for over 100 years and works perfectly. It is that you make the road wide enough at the point where the bus stops are that traffic can swing out to pass the buses, but the buses are still on the main carriageway. I would like to ask that highways try to build that into their plans, please. And if not, please explain why not, because it seems a complete no-brainer that answers both aspects. Finally, back to the sustainability side. As a chemical engineer who's done heat loss calculations for over 35 years, they are inaccurate. They can be plus or minus 10% at least, often more. And my concern is not that just that 3.5% isn't enough to meet any future regulations. 3.5% may well not be enough to meet current building regulations with the error bars that are on that calculation. I have had useful discussions with officers as to whether some sort of planning condition could be imposed. Unfortunately, we couldn't find a way of doing so, but I would want to flag that up as a further undesirable feature of them cutting it so fine on a calculation that isn't accurate.
Thank you. David, I'll come back to you, David, if I may. I want to take Councillor Beckett first.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very, well, maybe a very quick question. 2 points. The first one actually was something that came up from Councillor Buckmaster, and it's a question for Jill and David, actually. Is it our policy to fence off SUDs in the middle of developments? I was on the Town and Country Planning Association study tour last year. They're actively pushing that we don't fence off SUDs, and we visited half a dozen exemplar developments and not one of them fenced off. That actually made them a feature and a landscape feature where putting them behind bars, just like the other development up the road in Sawbo already is fenced off, and it looks absolutely atrocious. And the second thing is, as I'm sitting here, I do have issues over the fact that we've only got a travel plan framework, which gives me issues based on the vagueness of other stuff that's come up throughout the evening, on whether we do have enough information tonight for members to determine this application and do justice to the people of Sawbridgeworth. And there were issues raised by Town Council that I think haven't been resolved either. So I do ask the question in earnest on whether we should defer this application and have another late night in next month, maybe.
Okay. There was one other hand that went up and I just didn't catch it in time. That's Councillor Crystal. So I'm going to take Councillor Crystal and then come to you, David, and then we'll maybe see where we are. So, and Sarah, have you just put your hand up? Yeah, okay. So it's Councillor Crystal, and then David and Sarah after Councillor Crystal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quick question. In para 8.35, it references internal roads within the site as shared surfaces. And I just wanted to clarify what kind of shared services. I understood that the Department for Transport had no longer backed shared surfaces. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. So, David, Sarah, you can fight between yourselves as to who speaks first and who speaks second.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to clear up a few points because they've cropped up on, well, one at least has cropped up on both applications now. The question of adoptions. The Highway Authority or HCC will only adopt highway which is to adoptable standard. It's quite often the case within developments with shared services and cul-de-sacs, etc., and lack of curbing, which is brought about by improvements to design, because they always look better without such concrete and specific types of tarmac as well as another issue. So the county is, by and large, will only adopt those roads which are to adoptable standards, which in the case of the previous application was the immediate access road entrance. And in this case, it would only be, if anything, the spine road. But that would be a matter for the county in terms of adoption. And I think that was the SUDS fencing issue, which I will cover that one. Councillor Beckett, I think that was. It largely depends what the SUDS feature is. A lot of SUDS features are actually dry for the majority of the time, and they can be incorporated in landscaping. Otherwise, they may be shallow. Equally, they don't need to be fenced in the majority of cases, but some are actually quite deep. So it's really a question of what they are, and that will come forward in the detail required under the SUDS condition requirement for deep engineered drawings and details. Thank you,
David. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just want to come back to the advice that Victoria provided on the legal side of things. You know, just taking stock, we know that this is a strategic site in the district plan, but there have been a number of comments and concerns raised tonight. And, you know, I think we just need to come back to if you want to defer or refuse the application, you need to narrow it down and be very clear on your reasons for deferral or refusal. So I think we just want to put that marker down again, just to be very clear, because obviously there have been a number of concerns that have been raised tonight. So if you're looking at a deferral, you know, we need to be clear on what that is to be able to take that away and work with that.
Thank you, Sarah. Victoria's going to come in again. Actually, Victoria, maybe I might just speak first, and then you can come in and let the members know if I've got this right or wrong. I'd rather echo Sarah's comments just now. Obviously, we've had another very good debate, lots of opinions expressed, but we do always need to remember that we are being asked to make a decision on the application that is in front of us. And on the basis of existing policy framework, We're not being asked to make a decision on an application that we might personally prefer to see, or based on policy provisions that don't exist today but might exist at some point in the future. We're being asked to make this decision on the application as presented today in the framework in which we have to consider it. Victoria, you can now tell me whether I've either got that wrong or right. Over to you.
Yes, Chair, you've got that right. I just wanted to obviously come in because I was conscious that I'd given some advice in relation to deferrals, and I just wanted to complete the cycle and then just give some advice in relation to the fact that if members are looking to refuse this application, and that the law requires that decisions should be taken in consideration with a development plan unless a material consideration says otherwise. And members are obviously reminded that this is a strategic allocation under the local plan. If this is just echoing on what yourself and Sarah have said, that if members are looking to overturn officer recommendation, then the committee's reasons need to be clear and convincing, and they need to be prepared to explain in full planning reasons for not agreeing with the officer recommendation. And obviously, I need to explain the implications of any refusal, in that it's likely to lead to an appeal, and members could also be called to give evidence at any appeal to further explain their reasoning for refusal for the application.
Thank you very much indeed.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt very briefly. We've lost Councillor Bull, but it has no impact on decision making because he's still core it. But obviously, if he came back, he probably couldn't vote. He's missed quite a lot.
No, if he were to come back, he can't vote now. He's missed way too much of this. So, but thank you very much. Tony Snow's hand's gone up.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. I think where we are with this one, frankly, is that we've got a scheme that is policy compliant. Regardless if we like it or not, and we will actually see better, it is compliant. And for that reason, I propose we should accept this application in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much, Tony. Just to be clear, can I take that as I was going to ask for a proposer and a seconder? Can I take that then that you are proposing that the recommendation for this application be accepted?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Do I have a seconder?
Yes, you do.
I have Councillor Page seconding. Just beat you to it, Councillor Ruffles. All those in favour, please show your hand, and again, hold your hand on the screen long enough so that Peter can count, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep.
Yep. All those against?
1. Any abstentions?
And, yes, indeed. And any abstentions? I think there must be some abstentions.
3.
3. Does that maths add up, Peter?
Yes.
Very good. Okay then. Thank you very much again for a very long debate. Thank you for your patience. This is to confirm that the following application has been approved. And that application is 318-2735 FUL. It's a hybrid planning application comprising full planning permission for 85 dwellings, along with a new access onto Cambridge Road, provision of new spine road, landscaping, associated infrastructure, and the demolition of existing dwelling, and outline planning permission for up to 99 dwellings with associated open space, landscape and infrastructure, with all matters reserved except access at land at Cambridge Road. We have just agreed to approve that application. Thank you very much indeed. So that completes item 5. It's been a small marathon for 2 items, but again, just to repeat, it's been an excellent debate. Thank you very much indeed. That moves us on to item 6. We simply need to note the items listed in item 6. So I'm going to take it that we are noting all of those items as listed. That brings us on to item 7. I don't believe there is any urgent business.
No.
In which case, that brings the meeting to an end at 9 minutes past 10.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you all very, very much indeed.